My dear students, as we have discussed about the selection of the vendor, there are some more consideration which must need to be taken while selecting a vendor for the reference checks for your company's position. Make certain that vendor is well insured. Insurance is a very much important component in the vendor selection. There are some vendors which are not insured, and obviously such kind of vendors should not be hired for the reference checks. Insurance is an important component, especially in the event of a negligent hiring lawsuit, because employers typically want to assign liability onto the vendor. So it is very much important to ensure that the vendor is insured, and because if something would happen, if something negligence happen in the reference checks, most of the time employers try to accommodate vendors, and employers typically want to assign liability onto the vendor. So insurance of the vendor is an important component when you are selecting a vendor. Also ensure the legal knowledge base of the vendor. So because insurance is also linked with the legal lawsuits of the vendor, so it is also very much important to ensure the legal knowledge base of the vendor. If the vendor has a better legal knowledge, that would be much more credible than those vendors which have a low legal knowledge. For example, any credible firm that conducts background checks should be knowledgeable, and should be knowledgeable particularly about the laws. Yes, it should be knowledgeable overall, but within the knowledge, the most important knowledge in the selection of the vendor is the knowledge about the different kind of laws which governs how credit information can be used. If you are trying to retrieve an important and a private information about different kind of people which you are going to hire, if you are not going through laws, obviously it would create a lot of trouble for the vendors, and not only a trouble for the vendors, it can create a trouble for the company. So you always have to ensure that the vendors for a reference check must have a thorough knowledge of the employment laws and the laws regarding the retrieving of the private information and maintaining the confidentiality and the privacy of employees and the employers as well. It should also be willing to consult with HR to ensure the company knows how to legally use the information it supplies. So know-how about the legally use the information the vendor is going to supply must need to consult with an HR, and HR manager must play a vital role in the selection of the vendor, keeping in view all the information about its insurance and it's about employment, laws, knowledge, etc. Conduct a test run before hiring a vendor. Some experts recommend testing the abilities of a vendor before signing a contract with them by providing a name of someone known to have a criminal record. So it is very much important to test run, because if you would not conduct a test run and you would hire a vendor blindly, it may lead to the hiring of a wrong kind of a vendor who have no expertise in conducting reference checks. So just give a name of a person who has a criminal record, and if the vendor would be able to retrieve the criminal record information about the person, you can say that the vendor is competent enough to get the criminal information about the person. And if the test run fail and the vendors are not able to retrieve the criminal information about the person to whom you have given the record, obviously such kind of conditions would have a question mark on the competency of the vendor. So always conduct a test run before signing a contract with the vendors. An employer can then assess how thorough and accurate the vendor findings are. So employers are giving them an assignment before signing a contract, and if the vendors are past the test run, then obviously the employer would be ensured that the person is competent enough and the vendor is competent to retrieve all kind of information for the reference checking for any particular position in your company. So it is a responsibility of an employer to conduct a test run before signing a contract. Otherwise, the employer would be responsible for the selection of the vendor, and if the vendor would create a trouble in the reference checks, you would be faulty in the whole process.